Welcome to my studio. My name is Ron Hazell and I'm a watercolor painter. And this morning I'm going to do a little demonstration of rocks submerged in a river. I'm going to do the demonstration on Arches 300-pound cold press paper, and I'm going to use 5 pigments: Oriolan yellow, burnt sienna, brown madder, Prussian blue, and ultramarine deep blue. And these are Holbein pigments. Okay, we're just going to start by pre-wetting the top part of the paper to paint some background trees by the edge of the river. So I'm just pre-wetting with clean water so that the pigment will mix on the paper. So a bit of Oriolan yellow, ultramarine deep, and just suggest some trees in the background. And we'll make some dark, some light, some warm, some cool, maybe a little bit of burnt sienna here and there. So the tops of the rocks, which are at the edge of the river, I can define those a little better just by dragging the brush across them. And now we can put in the rock color: burnt sienna, some brown madder, and ultramarine deep. And this wash is quite dark. And then we'll let that pigment dry a bit. Now I'm going to do some modeling of those rocks. The pigment that I put on for the rock shapes is still damp, and what I'm going to do is squeeze the pigment off the top of the rocks down into the side of the rock where it's getting less light, and pressing quite hard while I'm doing the model. So we have top lighting. Now I'm going to paint the river water, and I'm going to do that by pre-wetting the shape that represents the water, and I'm going to use a combination of burnt sienna and Prussian blue for the river water. So we need a little more pigment in the foreground, because that's where we're going to lift the rocks out of that dark pigment. A little darker still. And this wash doesn't have to be even. It can be a little more interesting, in fact, if it isn't. Okay, again, picking up the excess water at the edge of the painting. Now I'm going to use my dry brush and just soak up some of that excess water. And that should about do it. And now we'll let that dry. River water is now dry, so I'm going to take a 1-inch brush and, using clean water, just start lifting out some of the submerged rocks. Now this wash that I put on for the river is Prussian blue and burnt sienna. Now both of those pigments are semi-stainers, and that's one reason I use them. Some of the pigment will stay behind. So just indicating a light going into the water and off the top of a rock. Now we won't make these rocks all the same size, and we'll space them at varying intervals, and maybe another one coming down right in the foreground. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush to indicate a few smaller rocks. And there we have rocks that are underwater, and some of the pigment came off, but some stayed behind, and that's typical of submerged rocks. They take on the color of the river water. Well, I hope you enjoyed this short video of submerged rocks in a river. This was painted on Arches 300-pound cold-pressed paper, and we suggested the rocks by lifting pigment off the paper. And this technique is in my book that's coming out next year, titled The Artist's Guide to Painting Water in Watercolor, published by Northlight Art Books. So give it a try, and happy painting.